This is the Talking Property Podcast, brought to you by reword.com, the home of WA real estate. Thank you for listening to Talking Property, the show in which we discuss all aspects of real estate. Now, here is your host, Harvey Deegan, together with our expert commentators, Rob Druitt and Rod Bryan.
Time for another edition of Talking Property. Thank you very much for joining us, folks. And I think you're going to find this particular program a very, very interesting one indeed, particularly if you are thinking about renovations, because our special guest is Ashley Tunley, Senior Renovation Designer from Summit Homes. He will be with us shortly. Now, if you're thinking about renovations, listen up, because we have a man in the studio with us who is going to tell us all about what you can do and how you can benefit from his expertise as far as renovations are concerned. I'm speaking about Ashley Tunley, Senior Renovation Designer from Summit Homes. G'day, Ashley.
How you going?
Good. Renovations, in the context of the property market as we know it now, which is very, very buoyant, how is the renovation side of things?
It's very popular. It's very busy at the moment, backing off the grants that we had from the government as well. We've just kept going forward with our product, mainly based off the economy and also the real estate value rising and staying strong.
Your clientele, where are they mainly drawn from? Are they the people that have been in your standard home on a quarter acre for, 30, 40, 50 years?
Mainly leafy suburbs with good real estate value. Own occupiers for a number of years as well.
Actually, the market, as we know, has been very, very hot and very strong. And of course, with the grants that came through last year, particularly the federal grant, which enabled renovations, and I think it was a value of up to 1.5 million, which was quite generous. And obviously that was weighted probably more to the East Coast, which would have worked well for us. Did you see an immediate pickup in inquiry from when those grants came in?
Yeah, definitely straight away. The inquiry was very strong. I think there was a little bit of clients not truly understanding what they were entitled to as well. So there was a lot of inquiry, definitely, and later on we definitely picked up the work and more the genuine inquiry.
Was there enough time to enable, because it seemed to me a very short time frame?
It was quick. Yeah. It was quick, and it didn't suit the way that Perth builders work with approvals, planning approval, building approvals as well.
Yes.
Especially the time on site that we were restricted to get to as well. But luckily the government did extend that in the end as well.
So for renovations, can you not go through the planning process and go straight to a building licence, or do you generally have to go through the planning process?
If it's fully compliant, then we have the opportunity to go straight through to building.
Yeah.
I'd say 70% of our jobs require planning.
Yeah. It's not quite that simple, is it? Because they brought that in, didn't they, that to try and fast-track things, which sounds very good, that you don't have to go through that planning process and lose, 90 days of your life you're never going to get back again. But the reality is, often when you're doing extensions and so on, there's probably going to be things that you have to discuss with your neighbours, things you've got to work out. And my understanding is that even if it's just doesn't fully comply, then you can't go straight to building. You've got to go through the whole planning process.
Correct.
Otherwise,
yeah.
You start back at square one again when you find out 2 months later.
That's right. Yeah. So most of our jobs, we do a lot of second stories as well.
Yes.
Quite often they'll require
and got privacy
planning approval,
issues,
overlooking
and
over heights.
Yeah.
A number of reasons that we require planning approval. But obviously, as a designer, you take that into consideration when you first sit down and start designing the extensions as well.
I'm interested in the second story addition. How much does that dislocate the people who actually own the house? Do they have to move out for a period of time?
Our second stories they're probably the easiest renovations to live through, especially with our modular technology we have. We build it off-site in a purpose-built factory, so all the work is done off-site. About a week beforehand, we prep the roof, and that's generally the first sign that the clients know that we're building their second story.
So is it a bit like Lego Masters? So in a much bigger scale.
Just a slightly bigger scale. I have had clients in the past that have built a replica Lego extension of what they were after.
Yep.
So it does happen. But no, it's a much larger scale. We've got a 6,000
It's a wonderful idea,
factory.
though, because that often is the big stumbling block, isn't it, for extensions? Because people think, well, I'm going to have to move out, the place is going to be a great big mess, it's going to go on forever. Obviously, the time to do it is significantly reduced.
Correct, yeah. So it's undercover, all-weather facility, The trades like it because they're working at ground level. They're not up and down scaffolding all day long, not getting chased by dogs. Whether it's rain, hail, or even too hot, fully undercover, so no impact from weather. And the clients are invited a number of times to come into our factory as well to see it.
And how big are the modules?
They vary. We normally do a two-piece module, so they vary about 5.4 metres wide by 12 to 14 metres long.
Oh, they're big. Yeah. So that it could be in one extension in itself, and then you add another one, and next thing you know, you've got your whole upstairs.
Yeah, so average about 65 square metres with a second story extension, a master retreat set up.
What sort of cost is involved?
So generally, most of our second stories, they range from about 230 upwards.
Ashley, Rod, Ryan, as agents on the ground, Rob and I, we would go into somebody's property to do a market appraisal, and quite often the question is, whether they sell or whether they extend or whatever. And of course, the big word overcapitalisation starts to come into it as to, whether they're doing the right thing or not. Having said that, I've been to properties where I've seen the crane pull up out the front and literally, lift this second story onto these properties, and I've often just wondered exactly what that is costing and so on, and whether that's cut down with what you're doing, whether that's cut down the cost in doing those extensions, if you like, or second stories to the point where the pendulum swings around that you're better off to do that than actually sell your house, pay stamp duty, go look for something else. So you've done some things that are a bit innovative as far as I'm concerned. So maybe you could expand on that a little bit, what you've done.
Yeah, so the modular construction, it's more about time efficiency on site as opposed to cost efficiencies. Mm-hmm. There's not a great cost saving.
Right.
It's more about time away from site. So clients being able to stay in their house a lot longer. If you're value adding to your property, then you're not overcapitalising.
Yes.
Okay, so a lot of time clients, if they're going to sell their property and move next door, there's money in stamp duty, moving costs, selling fees.
Yeah.
So that's money they can invest straight into their own property.
Plus the fact they've got neighbours that they like, and if they move somewhere else, they might find that's not quite the case. So a lot of people don't want to move for those reasons.
That's right, and it's understanding location as well, school zones. There's a lot of reasons to stay where you are and invest in your own property.
I must congratulate you on your premises there too. I was invited down there. My God, they're absolutely outstanding. Yeah, absolutely
the showroom's
wonderful. Yeah,
outstanding.
And talk about Lego Masters. When they did it all, Rob, they actually you stayed on site and sort of built the back, and then they did the front and so on. Yeah, it was wonderful what they've done.
The install.
Yeah, very much worth seeing. Yeah, really is. Credit to you.
Well, with the increase in property values too, that equation of overcapitalising has changed somewhat. It was probably a bit of a different conversation 10 years ago, whereas now with the significant property growth, particularly in the leafy suburbs and western suburbs, inner ring in Perth and so on, middle ring, family homes, it makes a lot more sense now to be retaining the property and extending on it rather than selling up. And
you've got to do it smart, and you've got to be doing it for the right reasons as well.
And particularly if kids are still at the schools and so on, they're all settled in the area, but they need the extra space. And we certainly find it, don't we, Rob, when we're doing appraisals of property, people are going, well, is it worth us doing an extension? So just talking about that, the average cost, I know it's hard, how long's a piece of string, but the average cost for a extension upstairs to do main bedroom, ensuite and a small living area, would that be around the 250, 300?
About 220.
220, that's not too bad then, is it? Yeah, and then you think about the value, Rod, of what it adds to your property to go from a 3.1 to a 4.2, different scenario altogether. You're certainly going to be adding more than that.
And with all the renders and everything that they do now, match the house up. Yeah, they don't look like an extension.
That's
in the old
the key
days,
to a good reno is to make it look like it's been there.
Yeah.
It's always been part of the house. It's got to look like a two-storey house, not a house that's had a renovation done.
Right.
That's a really good point, because obviously your modular building material, steel frame and so forth, is state of the art. Now, what happens if you go into a home that has been around with great character for about 40 or 50 years? How do you actually mix those two together so that it doesn't look like an extension?
We've got a really good case study on our website. It's a character home in a character retention area in Mount Lawley. The clients were very firm that it had to look like a two-storey house. And so with our master wall cladding that we use as an external cladding system to our steel framework, we tuck pointed it, and it related exactly to the existing tuck pointing on the original house. Sure. And that one particularly just picked up an award at the Master Builders Association Award for Best Alternative Construction.
Interesting. All right, if you've got a bit more time to spend with us, it's a fascinating subject. We'll take a little bit of a break and be back with you shortly. you looking to buy, sell, rent or find an agent in WA? For all your property needs, visit rewa.com, the home of WA real estate. Rewa.com can help you find your next home with all the latest properties right at your fingertips. For all your property needs, visit rewa.com, the home of WA real estate. To find the right local agent, use rewa.com Agent Finder to search and compare real estate agents in WA. For all your property needs, rewa.com. We at Talking Property are indebted to rewa.com, our major supporters. Welcome back, everyone, and we are speaking with Ashley Tunley, Senior Renovation Designer from Summit Homes. We spoke a fair bit, Ashley, about two-storey additions or second-storey additions. What about the old granny flat trick? Do you have much call for you to put a granny flat onto an existing house? Same level, of course.
We do a lot of multi-generational homes, granny flat specifically, ancillary accommodation we can't do upstairs due to it transforms a home into two different class buildings. We need to then take into consideration fire separation and things like that. So we can't do a true granny flat upstairs, but we can do extensions that will accommodate a growing or a mixed family, so to speak.
That's interesting. So is it classified as like an apartment complex?
Exactly.
Yeah, and then you've got a whole lot of, you've got acoustics, you've got
it's all about your fire separation.
Fire separation, it becomes very complicated. Whereas if you put an ancillary unit in the backyard, which is separate, it's a different thing altogether.
Yeah.
Now, there are restrictions on that too, aren't there? Maximum 70 square metres, is that right?
Depending on the suburb, but generally 70 square metres, yep.
Yeah, which is it's a bit too small, really, isn't it? I mean, give Granny a bit of a decent sized place.
We've got some granny flats on display, and it's amazing what you can fit into 70 square metres. We've got one on display now at the back of our showroom, out in front of our factory, and people walk through it and they're amazed.
Could you build that modular too?
Yes.
That'd be perfect, wouldn't it?
Yeah, but generally you can't because of the weight of the granny flat and the reach of the crane.
I
It's
see.
not like you're just lifting up a fiberglass pool over a house.
Yeah, I see.
With the granny flat, do you automatically tack it on to the existing building, or is it a separate building, 3 or 4 metres away from the main house?
It depends on what the client is trying to achieve out of it. If it's a granny flat that they want their separation and their privacy, then you'll put it into the backyard. If it's for adult children that have come home, they want it attached, then we'll attach it to the house, and then we make it look like an extension so it flows. You've got your resale there as well when it's time to move the house on to the next person as well.
I think that the concept of the two-storey, and if you can do the tuck pointing and all that, that to me would be, you go around these streets in Applecross and you see some lovely older homes, but if you could go and make them larger homes for today's living, but also to
without having to knock them all over and rebuild completely.
Yeah.
And use the existing structure.
Yeah, I think that could be sensational. I'd like to have a look at the website and see that.
Actually, the question I've got is, and I suppose from your perspective, is it's always hard when you're renovating to nail the cost, so to speak. I mean, when you're building new, okay, we've got all these new products, we know the labour hours, so on. How do you work that out when you're dealing with a existing property? There could be issues you don't know about with the plumbing, with the electricals, whatever it is, which you discover, obviously, as you go through that process. You obviously need provisional sums, or how do you work it out?
So with our experience, over 40 years now of doing renovations and extensions, it's a true fixed price contract.
That's great.
We take everything into consideration.
That's really important.
We know
for
what
people,
to expect, So there's a lot of people out there that are trying to start renovation companies. They're the ones that are at risk because they don't understand the true cost, what's involved in renovations.
Yes.
It comes down to clever designing as well, understanding the existing house, the age, everything that could be wrong with it, and it's about having the open discussions with the clients as well, and what you've allowed for and what you haven't allowed for as well.
And do you ever do a cost-plus contract, or is it always a fixed price?
Always a HI lump sum building contract.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that from the client's perspective, they know exactly what it's going to cost them, and it can all be specified very clearly.
That's right. No provisional sums. We nominate quite particularly the type of tap, the type of bath, the type of bench tops, everything like that, so clients can see exactly what they're getting.
Yep.
We invite them into the showroom, we sit down and we literally show the people, our clients on site, this is exactly what we've allowed for.
And I suppose it's your due diligence beforehand in checking out the electrics, checking out the plumbing, checking to make sure that what would and what does and doesn't need to be replaced.
That's right.
As part of the whole
first
process.
appointment is at their place. So we physically walk through their place, walk around with the clients, get an understanding of what they're trying to achieve. Their family dynamics as well is really, really important, but also understanding, look, this house could have asbestos in, this house could have old electrics in, so there's a lot to think about from the get-go.
Actually, does a situation ever arise of when a family has a single-storey house, an old single-storey house, and they say, we want a second storey, and so you organise all of that, and the fittings and everything else are so modern and so state-of-the-art that they think, well, wait a minute, now that's going to cast a shadow on the first or the ground floor. So do you then perhaps have a secondary contract that's sometimes drawn up for you to upgrade, to upgrade the fittings and so forth in the main house?
So you try to blend it into one contract. That way you're not getting the clients to live through two renovations. They're living through it once. We can stage it so the clients do live in the house while it's all happening, so they're not without facilities whilst it's all getting built as well.
And what about the wonderful winters in Perth? There's only about 3 months when it's raining. How do you deal with that? I suppose it's just a management issue, isn't it?
With the modulars,
you don't rip the roof off
pick the day.
in the middle of July.
Yeah, so if the roof's open, and we'd have some open now with the rain around, it's fully tarped. So your house will look like a circus tent for a little while. On the day of the install of the pod, we pick a day. The supervisor are fully aware of what's happening with the weather. If we have to push it back a day or two, then we'll do that.
So the pod's installed, and like, how quick is it?
So they're generally installed. The trucks will leave first thing in the morning. The crane will be set up when they get there. Generally, just after lunch, the second pod is installed, and then straight away there's trays on site.
So off to work in the morning, single-storey house, come home at night, and you've got a double-storey home.
It's not bad, is it?
Clients will stay at home. They don't go to work that day.
No,
so the whole street will be out watching. It's a big production. We take over the street effectively.
Fantastic.
We do a letter drop to let the neighbours know that what's happening, and that then will mean that they'll stay at home and watch as well.
Ashley, how do we get in touch with you if people are interested, and I'm sure they should be, examining this option a little further?
So you can call Summit Homes directly. You can visit our website as well and make an inquiry through there.
Ashley, thank you very much for joining us on Talking Property. We appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks,
Thank
Ashley.
you.
Thanks very much, Ashley.
Well, Rod and Rob, I've certainly learnt a lot about renovations by listening to what Ashley Tunley had to say. Certainly a market leader, isn't he?
Oh, very much so. And the idea of the pods and putting that on as a second story makes a lot of sense. And a quite reasonable price too, I would have thought. And particularly with, adding value to your home.
Yeah, I think it'd be quite interesting to go and see them lifting the top of the house, however you say it, lifting their pod onto the top of the house with a crane and blocking off the whole street and having all the neighbours around and watch it. Quite amazing. And the whole thing's built off-site in a special place.
The thing that I just assumed wrongly up until this point of time was that if you were going to have renovations done to your house, you just vacated the house.
You had to leave, yeah, exactly.
And you're there, not on site.
No, you just need to leave for one day.
Yeah.
It's pretty good.
Absolutely fantastic. Again, thanks for joining us, folks, and I hope you'll join us again for our next edition of Talking Property. Thank you very much for listening to the Talking Property podcast. We trust that you have enjoyed the program. We are delighted to announce that Talking Property has become more and more popular as listeners discover us. Talking Property can now be heard on about 15 podcast platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, Amazon, Australia's iHeartRadio, and Podbean. To keep all of our episodes together, download the Podbean app. Once downloaded, follow Talking Property and each new episode will be delivered to your device automatically. Talking Property is proudly sponsored by Rewa.com.
Thank you for listening to this podcast of Talking Property with Harvey Deegan, Rob Jewett and Rod Ryan.